That ruins it.
That is sabotage. And with these slices of Battenberg, Bob, I say
you.
welcome to Waterstones.
Thank you very much. Well, lovely treat.
We'll get to the significance of Battenberg later.
Having said that, I think the ratio of marzipan to cake is a bit off.
Do you know, I'm actually...
This is Kipling, isn't it?
I'm furious on your behalf. In the book, it's made very clear that the nicest thing you can do for somebody is to give them the end of the Battenberg because it has more marzipan. Imagine my disgust when I picked up this Battenberg and discovered that there was no extra marzipan.
This is a continuous, infinite Battenberg.
It
it's probably made in Preston, so it just goes round the ring road.
Yeah, just keeps going. So I apologise for not being able to give you the nub end of a Battenberg.
That's okay.
Know that the gesture was there in my heart.
I know. I realise. I can see. Okay. I can see that you mean that. I'm going to have a bite because why not?
Please do. It's great to have you here. I'm sort of amazed that with your fishing commitments and of course the time that you take to confound people on Would I Lie to You, that you have time to write fiction. And so you must really want to. And my first question was, what was it that drew you to creating the Satsuma Complex first of all, and now its sequel, the Hotel Avocado?
I think the honest answer is I've never had a burning desire to write stuff. I've never had the belief that, you've got to be quite confident, I think, to write a book. I've never had that. But then lockdown came, and that's the catalyst. Is that the same thing?
Yeah.
I would never have done it without that happening. So yes, it was to fill those endless hours. And then I discovered I did quite enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because I don't like write in a study or something. I just write I'm just on the sofa watching the telly, then a few words, and then if the telly's good, put that away. It is, it doesn't like define my life, the writing.
Yeah.
I'm not a writer. It's not like get up, write.
Yeah.
If it's of any interest, because I'm old, I get up early. So I tend to try and do about 500 words between sort of 6 and 9 o'clock, something like that.
Yeah.
And then I feel I've done enough, but with a little hope that I'll return to it a few times that day. If a show's finished, or you've got to the 4th episode of a box set, and I'll go back to it, liven myself up. Or if I have a thought, I write them, people, we have thoughts, don't we? Mm-hmm. We're stuck with them. You can't turn them off, and that's a good thing sometimes, terrible thing on other times. And if one of those thoughts feels like it could get in the book, I just on my phone, I keep that's a nice idea, that's a nice name to call something or someone, or that's an interesting look on the telly. And my character should have that look, especially on YouTube. If you want to look, there's nowhere better than like the caravanning section of YouTube.
I've not found that section so far.
But you would say, well, I mean, I'm not being, because they're short videos, and if you go into it, they call them van life. It's people who've sold their houses and they live in a van, and they've got a lump sum that they can still enjoy their lives. But boy, you see some outfits and some attitudes, and some stances. So, I do watch a lot of telly, and I sometimes feel ashamed of it. But for writing, when I'm an old man who's not getting about much, it is your little link with the world.
It's giving you good stuff.
Yeah, or just a little, an inspiration here and there.
Sure, writers often talk about people watching, and they make it sound like a sort of, they're sort of sitting in the park, like they're at a safari and watch people. But you do yours via YouTube.
I suppose I do. When I think it was my autobiography, but if not, definitely the Satsuma Complex. If I was struggling, I go to my local retail park, and I don't know whether I found that inspirational or whether it meant I was so desperate to get away. I had to, but so it did work for me more often than not. Just sitting in my car in a retail park, opposite a Pets at Home, which is nice.
It's a place I found myself.
Seeing a dirty dog go in, and then a clean dog come out, puts a smile on your face, and that's nice. You can write then. I read somewhere that someone said that the one thing you cannot do if you're depressed or anxious is write.
Okay.
And I think that's so true. So clean dog, right?
Like all is well with the world.
Yeah, something like that.
Those who have read the Satsuma Complex will know the characters of Gary and Emily. Can you tell them where they will find those two people at the beginning of the Hotel Avocado?
I think it's 6 months after the last book, and the circumstances have changed. Emily's moved down to Brighton to take over her father's hotel, and Gary is wondering whether he should take the plunge and move down, help her run the hotel, move to Brighton. Grace, Gary's neighbour and seemingly best friend, is probably trying to guilt him out of moving. And that's an everyday kind of situation. But then the events of the first book come back to haunt all three of them, and a sort of new adventure commences.
As you mentioned, Emily's gone down to Brighton to take over the hotel that was run by her father. We can guess from the title that it becomes known as the Hotel Avocado. You could have chosen any name for this hotel, and I want to know, what was the appeal of the avocado to you? Why was it the only name that would be appropriate here?
Do you know, to be honest with you, it was originally called the Hotel Aubergine. And then quite a long way down the process, my lovely editor Holly pointed out that the aubergine is not quite what it used to be as an image.
It has taken on a whole new cultural meaning.
Yeah, so avocado began with A. There was a little bit originally about whether an aubergine is a fruit or a vegetable. It's a bit of avocado. Some people, the odd person, might think it's a vegetable. So that was useful for the book.
It allowed you to keep your themes.
To keep those little themes.
Yeah, but without causing any offence to
without
people.
causing any upset.
I'm imagining that if a hotel had a giant aubergine outside the front of it, you would get a very particular kind of clientele, I would imagine.
Sorry, you said aubergine.
Yeah.
Yes, you would get a very particular group of, yeah.
Probably looking for an hourly rate rather than, yeah.
But the more I wrote the book, because it has an incredibly exciting planning application conundrum, the more I wrote the book, the more I thought, actually, it would be a very good marketing tool in these modern times.
Yeah.
It really, I started actually believing when there was crowds coming to the hotel to take selfies.
Yeah.
I thought, actually, yes, it might actually happen in these days we live. So,
you mentioned Grace, and actually one of the lovely things about this book is the depiction of the friendship between Gary and Grace, which is quite an unusual one because obviously they're not the same age, they're from very different backgrounds. Tell me a little bit about writing those two characters and their friendship.
I think, because I was kind of brought up by my mum, I think I've got a little affinity with her, sort of the elder generation, and her friends were that generation as well. So I was used to sort of being in their company. And I've always found them, I mean, maybe they are, it's unique to me. I've always found them really interesting, and polite and funny, and often not what you think they are once you get there. And I liked it that Grace, a bit like my own mum, she was very reserved at first. I think, if I remember correctly, it took 6 months for her to even speak to Gary at the beginning of the last book. But there was actually a really worthwhile, funny, lively person there, just waiting for something to click her back into action. It's like there's quite a lot of pathos, isn't there, with her, an older lady who's had a really I hope one day to tell Grace's story as a different, where her life, but living alone in a council estate, it resonates with me. And it feels very sad, that she's had quite a life, but this is where it's ended. And Gary's lonely, and there isn't in social. Maybe I'm too old to have really be able to tell the truth on this, but when I was young and went to London, it was really hard to meet people. And an old lady next door was a bit of fun. Would have been a gift, to be honest. Maybe these days it's easy to meet people. I don't know. I'm imagining social media. I don't know, but
yeah.
So yeah, I kind of believe in Grace, and I want people to like her. And I'm being a bit grand saying this, but sort of to remind people that there's a person. There's a person there.
Yeah.
Who I think if I ever did write more for her, I think she'd be a right laugh.
You've sort of hinted there, that idea about sort of feeling a bit lonely and isolated when you first moved up to London. Of course, you were working in law in Peckham in your youth too, and I wondered, not that you're necessarily drawing from your autobiography in order to write this story, but I wondered what abiding memories you had of those days sort of working.
I remember that sort of like the problem that London presented to actually penetrate any social life whatsoever. I remember that quite quickly that big hammer of work in life, I think, because it was my first job that was for a long time, you know, that this was my career. I remember thinking, this isn't great. It feels like I was doing mainly criminal defense stuff and family law, and it's really, really interesting at the beginning. But it's amazing that a job on the face of it is interesting. That just like most jobs, I think, maybe it's just me, 3-4 years in, it's felt like drudgery, you know.
Yeah.
And that initial excitement's gone, and you've seen all the people before. You've heard all the stories before, different versions, but so that's sort of my memory. It's like not a great period of time, and I suppose part of the writing of the book is because it's me in the book. Part of it is to pretend that I had a slightly better time than I did, you know, make up an alternative as to what happened with Emily and Grace. The Grace is. The place that Grace lives and Gary lives is where I lived, and that's what's in my mind. And the little play area where that terrible accident happened, and the people in the book are ex-bosses that I've had, people I've worked with, you know, or criminals that I dealt with. So that's quite nice. Nice to have something to base it on from real life.
For legal purposes, we should probably stress that they are based on real people, but not actual people. There are moments sometimes when you're reading a book and you come across a line which rather beautifully encapsulates a character. And I believe you may have nailed it with Gary when he says, "I'm Gary, I'm a shithouse, and I'm out of my depth." Shithouse comes up quite a lot in this book. Could you please maybe explain what you mean by shithouse?
It's not that he's not a fighter. It's just a prevaricator, someone who can't make a decision, who always thinks more about the consequences, the negative consequences, rather than the positive consequences. And I suppose it's just an old trope, really. You know, like he gets into trouble with criminals in this, and he is out of his depth. I don't think he would be able to fight. I don't think so. Emily's the fighter, I reckon. We
obviously have our Battenberg here, but there's a conversation in the book where they're talking about basically your last meal, like a death row meal. Lots of very important discussion there. Have you ever considered this question yourself? What would your death row meal be? I
always think of that. My favourite meal is from my student days was bird's eye boil in the bag beef with powdered mashed potato and tin peas, and I've never lost it. I've never lost that love of it, and it'll hit me 3 or 4 times a year that there's nothing else that I would rather have. But sadly, Bird's Eye have dropped their sliced beef. You can get a version in Iceland,
right?
But it's not as good.
I
still go there, but it's not as good.
Yeah, maybe the campaign to reinstate Bird's Eye's
maybe
boiled in the bag beef starts here.
I don't know how many people do remember it. It's funny though that, say, a goblin meat pie has lived on, or Fray Bentos pie.
Yeah,
but that's lost its market.
See, just saying Fray Bentos pie has reminded me of the tinned sort of steak and kidney pie. I presume it would have been
very wide, but
very wide,
not very
thin,
very thin.
Grey pastry, terrifying, and
it is a terrifying item. And imagine what a weapon that lid would make as well once you've taken it off.
That's true, actually.
Yeah, it would be quite a weapon, wouldn't it?
A Bond villain like Oddjob could have made great
Yeah.
damage with that.
Yes, I'm safe here. He's only opening a pie.
Yeah, it's fine.
Little do you know, that lid's going to be coming at you.
He's arming himself.
Yeah.
As you said, when you're writing, it's sort of something that you're doing as part of your day rather than sitting in a garret and killing yourself. What's the thing that you enjoy most about writing? Because there's such an enjoyment when reading the books, whether it's the naming of characters or the sort of fun narrative elements to it. What do you enjoy most?
I suppose I can't get out of my system that I'm kind of a supposedly comedian.
Right.
So if I pull off a funny line, I think that still gives me the most pleasure. But the most satisfying thing is when you've written yourself into a corner and you find a way out that's kind of acceptable. That's a lovely moment, you know.
Is that with the plotting of the book?
With the plotting, yeah. Because I don't plot them, I just start writing. And you know, I think the danger of that is that you can go down quite a few cul-de-sacs. But if you've written yourself into a cul-de-sac with some good stuff, you're so desperate not to lose it. And if you can just find a way back, that's a nice moment.
I don't know if we can mention this. I don't know whether it would spoil the book too much, but there is, let's just say that the chapters do have the name of the narrator at the top of each bit, because we hear from Gary, we hear from Emily, we hear from Grace. We also hear from another character who remains nameless throughout.
Yeah.
It seems to me that those let's not say who it is, but that those chapters would be quite fun to write. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I enjoyed them very much, but I think we ended up losing quite a few of them.
Okay.
Because I was enjoying him so much that I wasn't bothering with plot in his chapters. So come the crunch, they felt a bit baggy, you know, because I do try as best I can to keep it chugging along. And then he starts off the book setting up a lot of plot, but then after that I was just enjoying writing him as a character. So we ended up losing a lot of those, but I did enjoy writing them. Yeah.
Maybe he'll make another appearance, because you have hinted that, you know, that you'd be interested in writing more about Grace. But do you think there's more story for Gary and Emily after the Hotel Avocado?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I favour Grace just because we kind of know so little about her, but there's hints. I love it that in the book on her leaving do, she sang Hot Legs, and there's something funny attached to that as well. Can't quite remember, but that made me think, oh wow, I wonder what is Grace like? Because she's very vulnerable at the moment, but she clearly hasn't been in the past.
Yeah,
and we know nothing of her relationships or anything. So that interests me, but I do have because I'm so close to them, I do have an interest in knowing what happens to Emily and Gary, but maybe we know enough about them, I don't know.
We'll have to wait and see. I'm very up for hearing more about Grace's life, because she seems like a very interesting woman. But Bob, it's great to speak to you about the Hotel Avocado and the Satsuma Complex. Thank you so much for giving that time.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you for having me, and thank you for the Battenberg.
That's a pleasure.
Course. It could have been Dayton Walnut, which is a more adult cake. But there you go.
Couldn't find it. I looked in the shop. There was no Dayton Walnut. I considered baking. I didn't have time. But next time, next book, Dayton Walnut.
Dayton Walnut.